last class was with regards to the store and forward delay that is typically seen at the place of the router. Now to continue our today's lecture, I would again move on to the whiteboard. Ramanand, is the whiteboard okay? Yes. Okay, everybody, rest of you, can anybody else tell us whether they are satisfied with it? Okay. No problem. Should I'll put my video off so that I can save up on bandwidth so that you can get it clear. Okay. Now today we have another important topic that we have to take care. This is what we know as packet forwarding in computer networks. So we saw it can be either circuit switched or it can be packet switching. Now within packet switched networks, there can be two types. One is datagram networks, and two, we have virtual circuit networks. I'll explain each one by one. The main difference between the two is that they differ in whether their switches use destination address or whether they use virtual circuit numbers to forward the packet from one end to another end. Which means if I use a datagram network in a packet switch network, which is basically part of packet switch network, I would have to use destination address to transmit, what we call as IP address. But if I use virtual circuits network, I will not be using the destination IP address to transmit. Instead, forward my packet to the destination from the host. Okay. What we typically use in internet generally, we would have an IP address. But there are some networks which use virtual circuiting in it. And that is an example I will write here of virtual X.25. We call this as X.25. Frame relay, ATM. These are the main examples which use virtual circuit networks. Let's first start with this virtual circuiting or virtual circuit network. I'll draw a figure to understand this virtual circuit. I have sender and the destination, and in between I would have some routers. Each are connected to each other using links. I will name this as A, I will name this as B, that is the destination. I have in between routers R1, router R2, router R3 and router R4. Understand this virtual circuit networks. Okay. Firstly, keep in mind that we are discussing what we call as packet switch networks. In packet switch network, we have unreserved network. We do not have reservations. Okay. And this is of two types. One is datagram and second is virtual circuit. Now, what is actually virtual circuit now? In virtual circuit, or what we call as virtual circuit switching, a path is established between the source, that is A, and the final destination, that is B, through which all the packets will be routed during a call. So I will draw a line here. Understand this. If this is my path, I will have this path to transmit all the packets through the call. Let's try to understand this. When I use virtual circuit networks, A and B communicate to each other and establish a path. And when this path is established, all the packets would be routed through this path only. Now, what happens here? For this path, as a user, A would think that this path is only for me. Nobody else is utilizing this dedicated circuit. This is what we call as a dedicated physical circuit. I'll just mention here. Okay. And they would think that that nobody else is using, only I am using it. However, other communications will also be sharing this path or the same path, whether it is from, let's say, from this side, there is some other path like this one. This can also be along the link. Now, what are we sharing here? You can see there is a link between R1 and R2. There are two circuits, physical circuits. One is this circuit, another is this circuit. So both of them share this common link in between the two. Both think that they are using this link only for themselves. And when this connection is established, there are several other parameters which are discussed between A and B, like how much would we be getting the bandwidth of transmissions, what would be the packet size. This all is negotiated when the call setup happens. What is call setup? Call setup is actually connection setup. And after the data is transferred, A and B decide to break the connection. So we say connection is cleared, or virtual circuit is cleared after data is completely transmitted. That's why virtual circuit is known as a connection-oriented service. As of now, keep it in mind what is connection-oriented service. I will come to it in future classes, what is connectionless and connection-oriented service when we take TCP and UDP. Now, what happens here? We had a packet here. Let's say this is our packet. We broke it into number of smaller packets and we named them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. This was then transmitted from A to B, but before transmitting, the virtual circuit was established. A told B, I'm sending it. We have a virtual circuit here and it started to pass on. How? It first transmitted first packet, then it transmitted second packet, then it transmitted 3 packet, 4, 5, 6 and so on. Okay. All of them passed through the same link. All of them passed one by one, means first one it received, then second it received, then third. This means packets are delivered in order. All of them take the same route. You understand what's in order? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One by one they get it. Same route means the same virtual circuit, the same dedicated physical circuit that was connected here. It uses that. The information that a packet carries with it when it has to start transmission from A to B, like destination and other details, in circuit switching, the packet information is small as compared to datagram networks. We'll come to datagram networks in a while. In circuit switching, we say, in other term, overhead of the packet is small. What is the overhead? Overhead is actually, let's take an example that you have to send something, and within this you put on the cover, the envelope, then you pack it, do the packaging, then you put the sticker and so on. If it's a fragile thing, you ensure that you put a good covering so that it doesn't break. So actual substance that you had to send was this much, but then covering made it a bit bigger. Exactly the similar way is when you have to send a packet from A to B, you have to inform the packet that this is the path, this is the destination where you're going, this is your source, MAC address, IP address, and other things, other details that we'll come to know. So for that, in virtual circuits, the overhead is much smaller as compared to the datagram network. Connection is reliable in the sense that you will ensure that packet is received by B one by one. That's why we call it as a reliable network. Why would we say reliable? We'll say that when A and B established a network, they got a virtual circuit. You know that you have, thought of congestion, you have thought of other things while you have done the call setup itself. So you are aware of how much would be the minimum transmission rate, maximum transmission rate that you will be getting, and your network would have planned accordingly. Billing is also easier in this sense in virtual circuits. It has some disadvantages in the sense that, for example, routers that we use in networks that we use are not as powerful as compared to this one. So it means virtual circuit switching equipment needs to be more powerful than the datagram networks. And if there is a link loss, this is the disadvantage. For example, if this connection, I'll put up a cross here, if this link is down between R1 and R2, this has to be re-established. Means you cannot, if packet was flowing from this, you cannot, if packet was flowing like this, you cannot change the direction like this so easily. Why? First, A and B have to renegotiate. They would have to create a new path. This would be gone. They would have a new virtual circuit like this. And then they would start transmission. This is known as resilience of a network. So resilience to the loss of a trunk, what I mean to a link, is more difficult. Failure would take some time to get back because negotiation between A and B to complete a circuit or to actually make a circuit takes some time. All right. This is basically a virtual circuit. Now, what are the things that we require within a virtual circuit? Let me clear this up. Now, virtual circuit, I'll write in short VC, consists of, number first, a path. What is a path? It's a series of links and packet switches between source and destination. As an example here, this is our switches, this is source, this is destination. And what is a path? The path that we create here would be this thing. Number one. Number two, we need virtual circuit number. And what is a virtual circuit number? There is a number for each link along a path. I would redraw a figure here that we had previously drawn. Or let me write the third one also. And the third one is entries in virtual circuit number translation tables in each packet along the path. Entries in virtual circuit number translation tables in each packet along the path. Okay, let me explain what I mean to say. Let us go to the previous example that we took. I'll again make the two nodes. This is the sender and the receiver. And in between, I have several routers. Well, now I have become an expert. I can draw this fast. In between, we have routers, and the two square ones or rectangle ones are our terminals. Once the circuit has been established, I have A, B, R1, R2, fine, and the link that I have in between the two is, let's say, this one. Once the link has been established, this is what we call as a call setup. We have now a path, a series of links and packet switches between source and destination. A virtual circuit, this is VC that we have now made already, and we have some numbers which are associated with each one. Virtual circuit numbers associated with each. So virtual circuit has a different virtual circuit number on each link. I have mentioned these in green, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. Okay, and an intermediate packet switch must replace the virtual circuit number of each packet that is traversing. So when a packet leaves from A, if this is our packet, when it leaves from A, the information that it has, okay, the information that it has when it leaves A would be that it would traverse through a path which is with virtual circuit number 1, 2. Okay, I repeat again. We have a network given here. A communicates with B. They establish a virtual circuit, the line given here as BC. The virtual circuit that has been created here, I will have it as A-R1-R2-B. Now the packets have to transmit through this virtual circuit. All packets starting from the host A to the destination B traverse through this link only, VC, A-R1, R2, B. A assigns a virtual circuit number within the packet, this, and tells the packet that this is your virtual circuit number, traverse based on this. This would take you to the destination. It will not give the exact destination of B. Keep that in mind. It will give an intermediate virtual circuit number that will take it from A to R1. Now we have a packet here which reaches to R1. We had 12 here. Okay, the packet once it reaches to R1 router, packet checks it. It sees that it has 1, 2 given here. As per its VC translation table within the router, it changes this 12 from it, removes this 12 and puts a new entry. And what that entry would be? 2, 2. All right. Now with this 2, a new number, R1 passes on this packet to R2. R2 receives it. Now what was this 2? R1 had incoming 1, 2 and 3 points here. That is the interfaces we have. I will point out the interfaces here with the help of another color, let's say blue color. This is one interface. This is one interface, sorry. This is one interface, this is another interface, this is third interface. As per the table, it gave that this is the incoming port, this is the outgoing one. To reach to R2, as per the virtual circuit, the destination has to be changed with this number. So it gave this number. That's why it moved on to this link and reached here. At R2 again, it checks, okay, this is my number, fine. This is my number. What's that? And I should change this number to a new number that would be again 2. With this detail about this virtual circuit, sends the packet to B, that is the destination, through its incoming link. The numbers next to the link are the interface numbers. Each router has its own table. What is this table? It's a virtual circuit number translation table. Okay, how does it look like? Let me draw a table here. This is the virtual circuit table that we would have. We would have 4 of these within it. Here we have incoming interface. Here we have incoming virtual circuit number. Here we have outgoing interface, and the last one we have outgoing virtual circuit number. So what we have here is basically, if we have as interface 1, incoming was 1, 2, outgoing interface 2, outgoing virtual circuit number we gave 2, 2. Likewise, we would have, for example, for 2, incoming interface is 3, 4, something like that. Outgoing interface is 1, outgoing interface is 1, 7. Now this table is within the router. What it sees that I have received a packet. I have received when incoming interface is 2. So when incoming interface is 1 and incoming virtual circuit number is 1, 2, by the table it gets to know that its outgoing interface is 2. If its outgoing interface is 2, what is the outgoing virtual circuit number I should place there? So it removes the 12 and puts in 2, 2. So that is how this router actually would work. And if a network employs a virtual switch, it must maintain state information for ongoing connections. What is the state information? State information involves all the details that are required for virtual circuit. What are the intermediate routers? What packets have been sent? What have been sent, and what haven't been sent, and so on. This is virtual circuits. Any question about virtual circuit? I hope you understand. The second part of our class is about datagram network. What is datagram network? Datagram network is the network that we typically use. That is how I am communicating with you. It's analogous to postal service basically. If you see postal service, when a sender has to send a letter to me, or let's say I have to send to, let's say, Abhishek, right? I should know Abhishek's complete details here, like what state is he in? Within that state, what city is in, what street, what location, what is his room number, building number, and so on. This is as a hierarchical structure of address. I would put on this address over the envelope and write the destination address and send it across. Then based on this address, Abhishek would receive this letter. The datagram network here is analogous to the same network, in which when you have to send this packet, rather than virtual circuit numbers, that is the intermediate numbers, you would not use that. You would use the actual destination number to transmit the packet. That is what we have as IP address 192.168.1.1, in which there would be two parts. One part would be explaining the network part, and the other part would be the destination part. This we'll study when we reach in IP addressing in network layer. When I mentioned the virtual circuit that we have less header, in datagram we have more header. Within the header or overhead, we have the information about the destination. In datagram network, we put in the IP address of source, that me, and the destination, that was Abhishek, from to. But in virtual circuit, we have only the virtual circuit numbers of the intermediate nodes. When the packet leaves the destination in datagram network, it uses intermediate routers. Intermediate routers use forwarding table that map the destination number, destination IP address to the outbound link. This we will understand more when we do the routing. The datagram network is known as, they don't maintain connection state information within the switches. Virtual circuits, they maintain the connection state. When we have to send a packet from one end to another end, we checked the route using the trace route. Trace route is used to see the end-to-end destination which we took in the right. So if we see overall what we discussed in the taxonomy of telecommunication network transmission, at the top what we have is telecommunication networks. Then on one end we have circuit switch networks. And on another end we have packet switched networks. Circuit switched can employ two things, FDM or TDM to transmit, and packet switch network can use datagram networks or virtual circuits. So this is like this. This is the summary of what we have discussed till now. Circuit switching and packet switching, circuit switching using FDM and TDM, packet switching using datagram networks and virtual circuits. Now if I ask a question, all right, you can use your microphone to answer the question. What is the difference between virtual circuits and circuit switch networks? Anybody? What I'm comparing is, let me, this no. All right, add this question. I'm adding this to your assignment. Yes, yes. But we use a dedicated path between A and B. When what is a virtual circuit as such? Yes, you are right. You saved others from the assignment question. Virtual circuit thinks that it has a dedicated path, but it doesn't have, because others are using the same path at the same time, because it's a packet switched network. Wherein circuit switch network, that link is completely given to you, partially or through FDM, through TDM. You are guaranteed that much of resources. In virtual circuit, it's a packet switch network. You won't get that link all towards yourself, even though you feel that you and A and B are connected, all packets move through it, but others are also using the same link at the same time. That I had showed in the figure with two different colors of virtual links, both passing through the same link between R1 and R2, which was in the previous figure. And both would employ its packet switch transmission, and that would be the statistical multiplexing. Okay, good answer, Ramanan. So I will not add that question in the assignment then. Okay. Marin, you can use microphone to answer, that's fine. If you have. Any questions? All right, fine. Now, we discussed packet loss, we discussed delays, all right. We discussed throughput. We didn't discuss few things within it. One was the bandwidth. I'll finish this bandwidth, and then we are done with this part, and we'll start with OSI layering. That would be the main thing. Like Ramanan has mentioned, you can put your microphone on if you have to ask a question, if you have to answer a question. In case you're sleeping, then it's fine, let it be off. Okay, next thing I'm talking about is bandwidth. Common term that we come across. What is the bandwidth that you get? What we have bandwidth is, we get bandwidth in hertz. When we talk about hertz, it obviously means we are talking about frequencies. So I can say a range of frequencies contained in a composite signal, or a range of frequencies a channel can pass. All right. For example, we say telephone. What is the frequency? 4 kilohertz. This is what we have bandwidth. Now, if I say in hertz, all right, like telephone, this is fine as well. Or the second way I can say is bandwidth in bits per second. And what we mean by this? It means number of bits that a channel or a link or a network can transmit per second. number of bits per second that a channel or link can transmit. This is what we have definition of bandwidth. Like you say, how much is it bandwidth? You say, I have 100 Mbps bandwidth. And what do you mean by that? This will be these many bits per second that your link can transmit across the channel. And what is the relationship between frequency in hertz and bandwidth? I mean bandwidth in hertz and bandwidth in bits per second. The relationship is that if you increase in bandwidth in hertz, it means it's increase of bandwidth in bits per second. What do you mean by increase of bandwidth in hertz? Means the range, the frequency range in a signal is increased, means transmission capability is increased, so you can have more bits transmitted per second. Right? You can see within the book there would be some examples of these, like bandwidth of subscriber line is 4 kilohertz for voice or data. Bandwidth of transmission line for data transmission can be 56 bits per second using modem. Now if a company improves the line and increases the bandwidth to 8 kilohertz, how much can we send using the same technology? Obviously we will double it in bits per second. Let's compare this bandwidth to what we previously discussed, that was throughput. Let me go to that again. Now, bandwidth was you send the data bits per second, whether it's useful, whether it's not, whether it was required, whether it's not, whether it was successful, whether it's not. But throughput would give you a measure in which how fast you can actually send the data through a network. Bandwidth and throughput, bandwidth also bits per second, throughput also bits per second, it seems a bit same. But we can send, like let's say if we have a bandwidth of, let me say here, I'll say B, bandwidth in short BW. If I have a bandwidth of B bits per second, with B bits per second we can send only T bits per second through this link, when T is always less than B. Bandwidth potential measurement, bandwidth is the potential measurement of a link, whereas throughput is actual measurement of how fast we can send the data. Let me give you an example to understand. In front of the let's say hostel, there is a road. The road can parallelly have 3 cars moving across. But at this time I see there is only 1 car moving across. How much is the capacity? 3 cars. I have written on the whiteboard. It's showing nothing. Can you see throughput written there? It's okay. Arifa? Okay. Did you get it, Arifa? Okay. Fine. So I was giving an example that in front of the hostel, 3 cars can parallelly move on the road, but at this instant of time there is only 1 car going, then next car, then next car. At some other time there are 2 cars going. So this 3 is the bandwidth, the carrying capacity, but actually how many go? Only 1, that is the throughput. Is this clear? Potential measurement of link is bandwidth, actual measurement is throughput. Another thing is you have a link on your campus in which you are given 10 Mbps to each student, but you are sending lesser data across this 20 Mbps, 10 Mbps. You are sending only, let's say, 1 Mbps at certain instant of time. So 1 is how much is the carrying capacity? 10 Mbps. This is your bandwidth. This is your potential. Then what is the throughput? How much data actually you have sent that instance of time? Was only 1 Mbps. Is this clear? And the third term that we usually come across is known as jitter, which is simply rate of change of delay. You measure several delays over the period of time and see how the delay has changed. This gives you rate of change of delay, and this we term as jitter. The delays, the throughput, the route, the trace route, and so all we'll take up in the lab. We actually took some of these things in the lab to understand this more. Now I move on to the next part of our class. For this, I would like you to open the PPT that we had already previously shared. I will not share it. I would use the whiteboard. If I use the whiteboard, then I won't be able to. I mean, if you can separately open it, that's fine then. Okay. Go to slide number 64. Everybody. Within the slide number 64, it says protocol layers and reference model. The topic that we are going to take is a layered architecture. To understand the rest of our whole course is about these layers. What are the devices within the layers? What is the protocols within the layers? This is what we are going to discuss for the rest of the semester. Within this, let's first try to understand protocol. Protocol we understood by the term rules that are used. Why we need rules? We need rules if we have to communicate something to somebody. The example that I gave while we were discussing the term protocol was when I was talking with Ramanand, I'll say hi, he will say hello, sir. I'll say, Ramanand, what time will we have class? He will say, sir, at 2 p.m. I'll say, okay, Ramanand, right? We used a specific human example in which there is a procedure of communicating between the two persons. Likewise, in networks, we replicate the same thing. You would have protocols to communicate between the two. And to understand that, we have different devices, we have different links, we have different protocols, like you say HTTP, UDP, TCP, MAC, and so on. What the designers have done, they have termed this as a layered architecture in which they have placed each device in a different layer, each protocol in a different layer. Why? So that we can understand this easily. What we have different pieces of networks lying here and there, which involves hardware, software, protocols, application, media, and so on. How to organize, how to discuss, how to understand this. Ramanan, the same PPT that we have shared at the first time. There's only one PPT which we have shared. The first one. That is chapter 1, versions 8.0. Slide number 63. Okay, 60, start from 63. That's fine, 63. Yes. I'm going to actually 64 itself, but now move to 64. This is an example of air travel. Now, when you say that I came to Srinagar from Delhi, it's a simple example like we say I sent a packet from A to B. But how did you actually move from A to B? You first, from Delhi to Srinagar, you first purchased the ticket, then you went to the airport, checked in the baggage, then went to the gate, went into the aeroplane took off, right? Airplane did routing, reached Srinagar, landed there on the runway. You went down from the plane, took your baggage, and went to your destination. So, saying that I came from Delhi to Srinagar is not that simple. There were a lot of phases that you went across. So, this example in next slide 65 can be horizontally broken. You travel from Delhi to Srinagar, in which the first stage was ticketing stage, purchase or any complaints. This comes under ticketing service. The second stage was baggage service, in which you had to check in the baggage at the destination, you have to claim the baggage. Third service was gate. You went into the plane, you offloaded from the plane, then runway and then routing. Now, what is the purpose of this? The purpose is that you see an end-to-end structure. If you're thinking here, we send packet A to B. In this case, you are being shipped from Delhi to Srinagar. You followed all these things. You followed all these protocols. And there were different things that took you from Delhi to Srinagar. First, you took a taxi to reach the airport, then a plane, then another taxi, and you offloaded at your destination. Each layer, whether it's ticketing, whether it's gate, whether it's routing, provides its service. And why we have this layered architecture? A layered architecture would allow us to discuss a well-defined specific part of a large complex system. You have divided your travel from Delhi to Srinagar into pieces. Why? To understand it in a better way. And this is what we know as layering. Each service here is a concept of layers. And why do we do layering? Reduce complexity. What I mean by reduce complexity? It's like if I have a problem now, my baggage is lost. Where to go? I would know that baggage is taken care by baggage services, and baggage services deal with lost baggages. I will not go to somebody in the plane like pilot. Pilot, can you tell me where did you throw my baggage? Right? I would not go to let's say a ticketing service where you do ticketing, that where is my bag. I know where baggage service. And likewise, when I divide my network into layers, I would easily know exactly where I can troubleshoot my problem. This is error in this protocol, where to fix this error. That's why network designers organize protocols, the network hardware, router, and so on, the switches that we have in terms of different layers, and define the work that this layer has a device which we call router, and this layer function is routing, addressing, and so on. Each protocol belongs to one of the layers. Now we have so many protocols. Put protocol, what is the function of this protocol? This protocol helps in routing. Put this in this layer. What is the function of this protocol? It's security. Put it in this layer. What is the function of this one? This is, let's say, error checking. Put it in this layer. Now we have a lot of devices. Divide each device, put it in some specific layer. So move to slide number 66. It says, why layering? Layering helps us in dealing with a complex system. You can easily identify a relationship between these models, that we call it as a layered reference model. Not just troubleshooting. Troubleshooting means where to find the error. you can easily, maintain and upgrade the system. Okay. Like, for example, the example it has given, change in the gate doesn't affect the rest of the system. The rest of the system remains as it is. And thus, by dividing all these functions into different layers, we form a layered architecture, which is known as a reference model. Move to slide number 67. It says Internet Protocol Stack. Now, once you put each protocol into one layer, together these protocols form a stack. And when these protocols taken together, they form what we know as Internet Protocol Stack. So what is protocol stack? It is the stack of different protocols of different layers taken together is basically protocol stack. All right. And also another term that we will use is protocol data unit. At each layer, we will have this message which we call as a data unit, or simply PDU, protocol data unit. If I talk about NPDU, N here defines what layer I am talking about. If I'm talking about network layer, I would have NPDU as network layer, layer 3 is protocol data unit. So what is data unit? Basically, it's just the message within that layer. Next term that we come across, I'll use the board for it. Now, since I defined this protocol as a stack, I have different layers. What layers? I'm coming to that in the next class. Now I have layer N, I have layer N here, I have here next, that is N plus 1, and below here N minus 1, and so on. Now layering is done in such a way that each protocol is within a specific layer, yes, but each protocol within that layer relies on another protocol, in the sense that if I have a protocol here within this layer, that is N, if there are protocols here, it would rely on a protocol which is under it, that is this one, N minus 1. Repeat. I have protocols in layer N, and I have to send this packet from A to B. Layer N in A would pass this protocol data unit or PDU to N minus 1, that is the layer below it. And N minus 1 would pass to N minus 2 until it reaches to the link. So this is my link. So if this is A as host and B as destination, P would also have a protocol stack. It would also have here N minus 1 and N and so on. And when I say layer N here relies on layer N minus 1, this is known as a service model, in which N minus 1 is said to offer services to layer N. So what is a service model? Service model is, in the layering, we have a layer dependent on another, or in other words, N minus 1 is said to offer services to layer. Now based on this, we have two reference models. One is known as OSI reference model. The second is known as TCP IP reference model. I'll take this in our next class, all right? Any questions? Okay, I've given you an assignment. The due date and the details are given there. You can, if it's handwritten, take a picture and compile it using PDF and email it. Email address is also given. In the subject, mention your name and enrollment number. And the lab assignment we'll take up in coming days. As of now, there's no due date for lab assignment yet. I'll first wait for your first theory assignment. All right, I'll see you in the next class then if you don't have any questions. Bye, take care.